Hello, everyone, and welcome to the latest episode of the Metabolism and Menopause podcast. My name is Stephanie, and I am your host and CEO of Vitality OET. We are a women's nutrition, health, and fitness company that focuses predominantly on women's hormones, particularly as they start going through perimenopause and onwards. We know that you start experiencing so many changes in this time of your life, whether it be hot flashes, night sweats, irritability, brain fog, or weight gain around the middle that seems to have come on out of absolutely nowhere, despite you not changing anything. So then you go back to those tried and true methods of cutting calories, cutting carbs, doing a bunch of cardio, the things that used to work. But now it seems like things just aren't working as well. You're putting in a ton of effort, feeling like you're not getting any results out of it, or the scale actually starts moving in the opposite direction. But we know now that your body is inherently different than what it was to you prior experiencing these hormonal changes. So our mission here at Vitality is to really help you understand how your body changes in this time of your life, so you can finally reach those health and fitness goals, live a life full of vitality, feel in control and at home in your body again, and really understand how to take care of this new body of yours. So today, I want to cover fat loss phases, the do's, the don'ts, how to get the most successful fat loss phase. We talk a lot about reverse dieting here and making sure you're eating enough food and boosting your metabolism and balancing your hormones. And that is the very first most important thing. If you aren't sure if your metabolism is in a good spot and that's why you're struggling, like if you've been cutting your calories and not seeing results and you've been doing this for a long time, you've been dieting for a long time, you're having hormonal symptoms, your energy isn't very good, your sleep isn't great, you probably aren't ready for a fat loss phase and we have to do some repairing first. But a really easy way to figure out where you're at, if you are ready for a fat loss phase or not, is to take our free Menopause metabolic quiz. I'm going to have it in the show notes for you. You take that quiz, it'll give you results based on everything that you input, telling you if you're ready for fat loss or not, if your metabolism is fast or slow, and then the steps to help improve that so that you can go into a fat loss phase if you're not quite ready yet. So if you get the clear, you are ready to go into a fat loss phase, you've spoken to me, you've done the reverse dieting, we calculated your calories, I give you the green light. This is the episode for you. So this is the point everyone gets really excited for, right? This is the moment that we've all been waiting for, that fat loss phase. It's the thing that we are so excited to get to because it's been what we've been working towards, right? And it's exciting, no doubt. However, fat loss phases do come with a lot of major considerations that you need to think about. And I'm going to discuss that here with you today. It's not always as fun as we think it's going to be. It's not going to be losing 30 pounds in 30 days. It might not even be 10 pounds in 30 days. It might just be 3 pounds. So first of all, we're taught that we have all these extreme things where we lose weight really quick, and we know those don't work because you gained it back right away, right? So we're going to make sure that you learn how to do this properly first so that you don't have to go through that whole lose, gain, lose, gain, lose, gain. Okay, that's goal number one. We don't want you to be stuck in this yo-yo dieting thing. We want you to do this correctly so that you don't have to worry about this ever again. You don't feel poorly during the process either. And the thing with a fat loss phase is just because we tell you, hey, you're in a fat loss phase, and hey, just because you cut your calories doesn't mean you're going to get results. There are lots of things that we need to focus on to ensure your success. So this is where things can be a little bit more nuanced. I can give pretty generic advice for most people on ballparks for the reverse diet. Fat loss phase is going to be a little bit more nuanced. So if you do need help with that, again, take that metabolic quiz first. Then you can book a consultation call with us and we'll kind of help you walk through that and what that kind of looks like for you. But typically, this is more of a threading the needle kind of phase. This is where we have to adjust things a little bit more minutely. We have to be a little bit more accurate, if you want to say, as well. Because phase one, when you're doing that reverse dieting, this is where you've been working on consistency and we're eating a bit more and we're more flexible with our food, right? We have more calories to play around with. So it helps our body also feel safer, right? When we're in that space. And it's all about learning the skills that you need in order to get into phase two. So we have our fat loss checklist that we do with our clients, and consistency is going to be a really big part of that, right? And then fat loss, our phase two in our program, in a nutshell, is making things less flexible, okay? More specific in order to lose weight. And while we're huge on not being super restrictive and you can still have the things you enjoy, there are certain things that you do have to ensure that you're doing. And sometimes that comes off with trade-offs. And if you're not okay with some of those things, you don't want to restrict as much, or you don't want to perhaps do every single thing, that's okay. But then you have to be okay with the choices that you're making, that matches the results. Because you can't expect to get the results that are like crazy and quick and all these things if you aren't willing to prioritize certain things. And sometimes other priorities come up, and that's totally fine. There's nothing wrong with that. But you have to be okay with the choices that you are making, take responsibility for those choices and the consequences that come with that, which can be not as great results as you were expecting to be. So you need to adjust your expectations. So if you're working with a coach, for example, these are things that we expect if we're working with a client. So if you're working with any coach, even if it's not us, these are things that your coach should expect. And if it's not talked about, these are things that you should just kind of make sure that you're doing already, because it's going to make you, again, more successful. It's very beneficial to you to do these things. And even if you aren't working with a coach, there's still things that you should be mindful of and aware of, because it is going to make you more successful. So, number one, adherence to the plan and the instructions that are given. If you disagree with them, or you cannot adhere to the goals that you are given, or the specific directions in whatever program that you're following, or the plan you've made for yourself, you need to either talk with your coach if you got it from a coach, or sit down with yourself and figure out, okay, what are some solutions and balance for any of the issues and limitations that can come up? Because if you don't stick to a plan, then you're not going to get the results, right? Like, for example, if we have a client working with us, if they don't communicate that this is like, I don't know how realistic this is, or I don't know if I can do that because of this, and we have to go back and forth and make sure we have a plan that we are sure that they can stick with. But they also need to communicate that with us, because if we don't know that this isn't like realistic, or we don't know that there's X, Y, Z, or whatever it might be, we can't guarantee your results, because we're guaranteeing results based off of the plan that we've created. But if you can't stick to that plan, then obviously you won't get those results. So there has to be a good aspect of communication there, and really understanding what's realistic. And if we have to adjust things and tailor things, that's fine. But then we also have to adjust expectations for that as well, which is the most important part. Otherwise, you feel awful because you're not getting the results that you think that you should be getting, right? So we need, like, communication needs to be there, and being aware of, like, am I actually doing the things, right? I think that's pretty obvious. Consistency with whole foods 80% of the time is going to yield the greatest results. Please, please, please be as consistent as possible and honest with your tracking. Even if this means that you don't necessarily hit the goals, please track it. Please write it down. You need to be able to look back and be like, okay, I'm not getting the best results. It's been a few weeks. What's going on? You need to have data that you can go back to and be like, was I actually consistent? And then go through how many of these were whole foods? How many of these were highly processed and, my sweet treats and all those kinds of things? Am I getting the veggies that I need? All that kind of stuff. So you need to be writing that down somewhere, because if you don't, if it's not working, then you can't figure out why, which is a problem. If we can look back and be like, oh, I wasn't consistent, or oh, I wasn't getting enough whole foods, that's not to make yourself feel badly about it. That's a good thing. You've identified the reason why you aren't getting the results. That's awesome. Now we can make a plan to ensure you actually hit those results, that you hit those goals so you can get the results. So people almost get like ashamed or embarrassed or feel poorly about it, but that's a good thing. We've identified what the problem is. It's a bigger issue if you're not getting results and we can't identify why. That's a problem. That requires more digging, more testing, more things like that. But if we can clearly identify that, hey, I wasn't so consistent. Hey, I was eating a lot of processed foods. I'm having chips 4 to 5 days a week. Very obvious where the thing is going wrong. But now you can make a plan to ensure that you can get to where you need to be. Whereas if you didn't know, that sucks. Because now you feel lost, and like you feel poorly about yourself, and you feel like very vulnerable and hopeless, right? When you know what the problem is, we can make a solution. This is good. So don't feel badly if it's like, oh, I'm not sticking to the plan. Okay, so let's stick to the plan. Let's figure out the things to help you stick to the plan or adjust the plan. Easy peasy. Don't have to take it as like personal or be defensive. That's something that we see a lot. We're like in a reverse. It's easier. We have more flexibility. We're like, oh yeah, you can do this, this, this. And fat loss phase is going to be a little bit more strict. There is going to be certain criteria that you have to hit, right, to ensure you're successful. And then people get upset if it, like, a coach will point that out, right? But that's literally what you paid us for is, hey, look at this data. Let's look back. Where's the problem? Here's the problem. Okay, let's address the problem. There shouldn't be any emotionality tied to that. That's just, here's the issue. Here's the crack in the foundation. If we can fix this, we got a sturdy house. We can keep building, right? So that's something to be aware of. And that comes hand in hand with honesty with your tracking. Are you taking extra bites and licks and tastes, right? Those can add up super fast, especially for those of us who are parents and, we're making lunches or we're cooking in the evening. We might have a little bite of this. We might have a strawberry here. And we're like, oh, it's not that big of a deal. It's just a strawberry. But if you add the strawberry and then, you try a piece of cheese and then you have this and that stuff can add up very quickly, taking you out of your calorie deficit. And then you're not seeing results. So being accurate is important. And I know people are like, oh, I hate having to do this. But in order to get to where you want to be, this is a necessary step for 90% of people, right? Because even I suck at estimating. It doesn't work. I can't look at something and be like, oh, this is this many calories. I'm off every time by a lot. So tracking is important and it's going to get you to where you want to be faster. So you don't have to do it for as long, which is always a win-win. It's a short-term thing. There's a start date, there's an end date, there's an exit plan. Like you shouldn't be like, oh, I have to do this forever, because you don't have to do it forever, right? So I'd rather you crush it, be consistent, track everything, be meticulous for that 6, 8, maybe 12 weeks, depending on the person. And then you're done. That's great. Then you get your little breather. You get to go back to more flexibility. You get to have a little bit more fun in your foods again before diving down again, which is great. The next one is like, if you're working with a coach, you can't expect to get results if you're not doing check-ins, if you're not communicating regularly, if you're not filling out your tracker or your metrics or doing the workouts, keeping track of how your energy is, your sleep is, all those things. And if you're doing it on your own, you need to be tracking those things too, because if we, maybe the scale's not moving, but we can see progress in other areas, we know that the body composition changes will come with that too. So you need to make sure that you are always communicating, adjusting, especially if you're working with a coach, because then they can't adjust things to make sure that we optimize how effective this process is going to be, because they have nothing to go off of. So be the client that makes sure that you do all those things, especially in a fat loss phase, because you can't change things without feedback, right? Like that's like, I don't know, your kid trying to like tie a shoe with someone never showing them. If you're not able to get feedback, they're never going to be able to learn how to tie a shoe. Like there's so many things that you do. Like imagine starting a new job and never getting feedback if you're doing good or not. You might be thinking you're doing amazing. But if you don't ever provide things that they can provide feedback to, then that's a problem. And if you don't have a coach that's giving you feedback and you're in a program, to me, that's a red flag, because how do you know if you're doing well? That's a huge issue. The next one, again, like I talked about realistic expectations. This is a big one, especially in perimenopause and menopause. It's a different ballgame now. Rate of fat loss is going to be slower. We're looking at 0.5 to 1.5 pounds per week after the first 2 to 3 weeks, because typically in the first couple weeks, you don't see much on the scale because you've got fluctuations and backup systems, like water retention happens. So if you're using the scale as a metric, look at your averages of your week, weigh yourself every day and take your averages, because if you're only taking one random snapshot every now and then, that doesn't work. It doesn't give you a accurate depiction. So for example, I'm weighing myself every day. Yes, I'm pregnant. So people are probably like, oh, why are you doing that? Because I actually want to see, like, I know I'm still going to have fluctuations and stuff, but I want to make sure that I'm not having like a crazy sudden increase or that I'm dropping right away. Like it really helps me stay more focused on like health stuff that I'm focusing on. So making sure I'm getting my protein and all those kinds of things, right? Focusing on my sleep, my activity, all that kind of stuff. And for example, like I have only gained, we're at like, I don't know, we due date's in 130 days. So we're at like 5 months in-ish. And right now, where we're at is like I started this journey at 145 pounds. I stayed at 145 pounds for the first 3.5 months, which to me, I was like, this doesn't make sense because I'm clearly getting larger. I don't know what's happening. So like, to me, that was like, I was a little bit panicked, to be honest. I wasn't gaining weight. And now we're up 7 pounds from where we started. So over the course of this time, we're 7 pounds. But yesterday, I was like 153.8. Today, I was back down to 152. So like, you can see, and then like the day before that, I was 153.2. So you want to take your weekly averages to see where you're going. Because I mean, like, if I was just doing one measurement a week, like the amount that the scale fluctuates, you guys should know this, it's a lot. So if you can weigh yourself every day and then take your weekly averages, we're looking for trends over time, which is what we want. But we don't want to have this crazy big drop on the scale. We don't want to see like 5 pounds in a week. We don't want to see huge drops because we know when we have big drops in weight, what we're seeing is a loss of muscle mass. And we do not want that because we know how absolutely precious muscle is during perimenopause and menopause. When estrogen goes down, and if you have low testosterone as well, it's a double whammy. Your body has a really hard time building and maintaining muscle mass. And muscle mass is what keeps us looking fit. It's what keeps us looking toned. It keeps us strong, keeps us mobile and independent. It also helps with our blood sugar sensitivity. When estrogen goes down, our blood sugar control gets worse. The more muscle we have, the less of an effect we see that have. So the more muscle you have, the better blood sugar control you're going to have, which is amazing. So we want to maintain that. And muscle mass is really, really important for keeping our metabolism high. It burns a lot of calories at rest, making fat loss a lot easier. We want to focus on fat loss, not weight loss. You don't want to lose 5 pounds and have half of that be fat and half of that be muscle, because you're still going to have the same percentage of body fat. You're not getting any leaner. That's not what you want. You're just becoming a smaller version of yourself that's still just as chubby. We don't want that. We want to just lose fat mass. So it's going to be a slower rate of decrease, which a lot of people panic at first because we're so used to these crazy, stupid fad diets, but you lose so much muscle. And that's why weight gain afterwards is so common, because you don't have any muscle to keep your metabolism high and control your blood sugars. So we want to maintain as much muscle mass as we can. So fat loss is going to be slower. This is why making sure you're taking pictures and measurements are very important, because a scale won't tell you everything. So that's kind of like some expectations and some realisticness around the fat loss phase and what you can expect. So now let's talk about what you should do and what you shouldn't do in a fat loss phase in perimenopause and menopause, because some of you might realize that, I'm like off a little bit, or maybe that's why I'm not seeing results, that kind of stuff. So number one, you first of all have to understand that your body doesn't want to lose fat. That sucks to hear, because all you care about is losing 10 pounds before summer, right? That's all you want. Not a big ask, right? But your body doesn't want to lose fat. That's not how our body is made. Fat loss is going to be an intentional stress that we put on our body, and your body is going to do everything it can to prevent you from losing fat. We have all these internal systems when we drop our calories that change. So our thyroid function slows down, so our body burns less calories at rest. We find that our movement is less, like our non-exercise activity, because we're more tired. There's all these things that start to happen internally that you have no idea are happening, that are actually evening out the calories in, calories out equation. It's not just how much you exercise and how little you eat. So this is why making sure that you're so focused and making sure that you're compliant and actually following the plan is so important for fat loss, because you have all these internal systems and we're planning for that. But the window of like variability is quite small, where like then it won't be effective. Your body is going to try everything it can to prevent you from losing fat. So you need to follow the plan, because if we start deviating a little bit here and a little bit there and a little bit here, it's enough variation where now your body isn't going to have that big enough window of calories in, calories out through all these internal systems anymore. So follow the plan. It's important. It's there for a reason, and that's how you're going to get the results. If you're not getting the results, then you're not going to, or it's likely because you're not compliant. So For example, in our program, we track compliance. We pay attention. Like, we track this stuff for you. Is protein being hit? Are calories being hit? Is self-care being followed? Is the exercise being followed? Like, we track all these things so that we can show you. And like clients ask all the time, hey, where is my compliance at? Because that way we can show them at any given time, here is where you're at. We want to see 80% or higher. We don't expect you to be perfect. That's not realistic. That will also just drive you freaking crazy, to be honest. But you're going to see that the people who are compliant see success. So this is where people are like, well, what's the success rate of this? And what's the success rate of that? If you are compliant, 80% plus, you will be successful. Okay, so it's like people already look for a reason things aren't going to work, right? You're already looking for that way out, and that tells me you're probably not quite ready yet. You're not ready for a fat loss phase yet, or you're not ready for this next step yet because you're already looking for all the reasons this isn't going to work. And if you go looking for those reasons, you're going to find them, and then you're going to create excuses around why it didn't work for you. And like this happens. We don't take people into our program that come in with that mindset, because you have to believe in the process. You have to trust the process. You have to do the process. Is it simple? Yes. Is it easy? No. Trying to eat like protein and a carb and veg at every single meal sounds easy. How often do you do that now? Not a ton, right? There's all these little things that like they seem like simple concepts, but they're not super easy. So this is where a coach can be helpful for you, right? But like having compliance to that plan is there for a reason. And if you think you're going to get results by not following the plan, what's the point in signing up for coaching? What's the point in following a program where you're not really going to follow it, right? So you have to be dedicated and follow the plan. The next one is a don't. Don't continue the flexibility of phase 1, your reverse diet, and expect that you're going to get great results. That first phase, the reverse dieting, it is meant to help you build up skills for your fat loss phases, like learning how to meal prep, doing some meal planning. That doesn't mean like you're writing down every single meal in advance. You're not prepping every single meal and putting it in Tupperware containers. We don't do that. I don't do that. I will never do that. So you're learning like tracking accuracy and how that works. And you're learning to feel more comfortable and building up a recipe database in your tracker as well. You're getting into your own nutrition goal. You're feeling comfortable. You're feeling good. When you go into a fat loss phase, that is not the opportunity to start being super flexible or estimating all your foods or going out to restaurants a couple times a week and still expect to see results, because you won't. Okay, when you go to restaurants, we cannot control what's going on there. The amount of butter that is tossed into meals, the amount of salt, not that salt's going to make you gain weight, but it's going to make you hold on to water for a couple days. So it can mask the results that you're seeing. The butter, that's extra calories. Like when you're going out, like I always say, add an extra 150, 200 calories to your meals, because there is a lot of extra stuff on there. The sauces, the oils, all those kinds of things. They don't steam veggies. They saute them and like soak them in oil, and they're super delicious, right? So you can't expect to go out as often or have as much flexibility and not plan and still get the same results as someone who is not doing those things, right? It's going to take more planning, because otherwise like you can end up starving at the end of the day. Like in a reverse diet, I'm always like, can you add 50 calories? Can you add a piece of cheese here? Can you add 6 almonds? Like you can add those things and not feel very hungry, right? Or feel very full. But then in a fat loss phase, we have to be more strategic with our planning. We have to, okay, maybe I'm omitting a little bit of the cheese here. It's not going to make me any less full, but it has a lot of calories, right? Or this is like, we were talking on this on a call where it's like the things that I typically cut out in a fat loss phase for that 6 to 10 week period, as I cut out nut butters, because a tablespoon of peanut butter is like 100 and some calories. That's not very filling. I take out usually my nuts and seeds. I usually take out a little bit more of my dairy, so I'm not having cheese as much. And if I'm taking out nuts, seeds, and a couple pieces of cheese, my meals really don't change that much. And now I'm down 450 calories pretty easily. But I can't have that flexibility. Like if I decide last minute I'm going to go out for lunch and go eat this, that, whatever, then in the evening I might be starving because I didn't plan ahead enough for that, right? So there is more stuff you're going to have to plan for, because you're not going to accidentally just hit your protein or hit your calories on accident and feel nice and full at the end of the day when you're restricting your calories, right? So it does take planning. You will not have as much flexibility. The next part, and this is my favorite thing to talk about. I could talk about it forever, honestly, a whole different podcast, but you do have to understand and be realistic where fat loss is as a priority in your life. If it's not as much of a priority as, like, let's say going out for drinks with the girls or going to social events and going out to eat and stuff like that, then you have to be aware your results will not be as good. So everyone says, I want to lose weight. I want to lose fat more than anything. It is the most important thing. Yet we still go out and we drink. Yet we still go out and have dinners 2-3 nights out a week, right? We have all these things that we keep doing. And by doing that, you are showing me that you are prioritizing other things, which I don't care. If you want to prioritize that, if that social time and having that drink is really important and a priority for you over your fat loss journey, amazing. I am okay with that. Your coach will not care. If that is your priority, then that is fine. That is your choice. However, you have to be okay with that. And I think for a lot of women in particular that I talk to, we have this idea that it's so important, so important, so important. But then push comes to shove, and it's that instant gratification, that other thing that we want to do, like staying up late and, going out to eat, having the alcohol and all these other things that are more important, but they're not okay when we bring it up that, hey, you did these things. If you want to prioritize that, that's fine, but then you're not going to get as good of results. And then they get upset because, like, well, I really, really want fat loss. And it's like, okay, but do you really want fat loss, or do you really want this other thing? And again, we're okay with it. I am fine with it. You can prioritize whatever it is in your life that is important to you, but you need to be okay with the fact that that is more of a priority than your fat loss journey, and that comes with certain consequences, and that comes with an adjustment of what your expectations should be. So you have to realize that, like, especially if you're working with a coach, like, even if it's not us, any coach, any program, if they point out to you, like, okay, well, you did this, so then you're not getting the result, you can't get mad at them. Maybe delivery could be better, right? But you need to take a minute and realize, okay, this is true. It can be a really tough pill to swallow, really uncomfortable, and it sucks when someone points out something that you were so sure was not true, right? But you have to be okay with the choices that you make, the priorities that you have, and the consequences that come with that, and how it affects the outcomes that you are most likely to achieve. Because we have women who are, like, not willing to negotiate, like, going out on the weekend, which is fine, but then your rate of fat loss is going to be much slower, right? Because you're staying up later, that's a stress response. You're having alcohol, that's a stress response. It leads to more fluid retention. It's going to be lowering your sleep quality, increasing your cortisol, affecting your hormone levels. So all these things. But if that's more important to you, then that is fine, but you can't have both. One is always more important than the other. You have to decide what that is, and then your actions have to show that. Because you can tell me till you're blue in the face that I want to be a millionaire. I'm going to save so much money and invest so much money. But if you're going to Starbucks every single day and spending $6 on a coffee, and you're not putting money into a savings, I would say that's BS, right? You tell me you want something, but your actions show me something different. And your actions really show where your priorities are. And then you have to adjust your expectations and take responsibility for those choices from the decisions that you've made, right? So that is a very huge thing that I think we're all so like, this is important, this is important, this is important. But do your actions show that? That's something you have to think about. And it's a tough pill to swallow, and people don't like when it's pointed out, because we want to get everything right? We want to be the best client. We want to be the person that can do all the things, and that doesn't mean you have to give it up forever. Fat loss phase has a start and an end date. So like you can go back to that later, but you need to adjust your expectations. The next one is also a very good one. Don't get caught up in the negative. This can mean a ton of different things, but let's say, like, I will say this, the women who go all in, who trust the process, who do the things, and they aren't stressed or worried about seeing progress every single day, tend to be the ones that are more successful with fat loss and get the best results. The more that we worry or convince ourselves that it's not going to work or are constantly focused on what we're not achieving or where we aren't yet, the less that you're actually going to see changes, the less that you're going to progress. So don't let that be you, because I did a podcast a long time ago, like when you think negative thoughts, your body isn't aware of, is there actually something there that's a danger that I need to like be protective and have my cortisol go up? Or are you imagining it? It's the same response, like when you watch a scary movie and your heart rate goes up. Your body doesn't know if like there's actually something scary and that you're in danger of, right? But your thoughts do the exact same thing. So remember, negative thinking is going to be an increased stress on your body and make it harder to lose weight. So the women who are so focused every day, I'm not there yet. I'm not there yet. I haven't lost weight yet. I'm not there. This happened and that happened and this happened and that happened. You're going to be the person that struggles to see weight loss. You have to trust the process. You have to let go a little bit, enjoy what you're doing, live your life, and not stress so much. Because again, if you're really just focusing on the negative and not there yet, you are going to struggle and you aren't going to be as successful as the people who just trust the process. That's just how this works. The next one is a do. Do be patient. Remember, I told you fat loss and perimenopause and menopause is a different ball game. It's going to be slower. Understand that if you get that quick response from your body, like if that's what you're expecting, it's probably not going to happen. You're going to leave yourself feeling disappointed. And there's a ton of reasons this happens, like age, history of diets, years of stresses, hormonal shifts, autoimmune conditions. There's lots of reasons that you aren't going to see this crazy big weight loss, right? Your body might not respond right away, especially if you have an autoimmune condition. We have to be in a fat loss phase a little bit longer typically before body starts responding. It takes some time, some momentum. So you have to be patient. Same with like building up muscle mass. You can't expect to go to the gym one day and all of a sudden you're super muscly and strong, right? It takes time. You have to be patient. If you're doing this correctly or you're working with us, this is not a fad diet. You're not going to lose 10 pounds in a couple weeks, maybe not even 5, It takes time. The next one is don't skip your metrics. So make sure you're taking photos, make sure you're taking measurements, measure the weights, do a couple different options to measure progress, because together then we can get a better picture as to what your body is doing, how it's responding, because the scale by itself, it's not a good indicator. I did a whole podcast on this a long time ago, but like we have clients who the scale has changed, like not at all. It fluctuates throughout the process, but the scale has stayed exactly the same, but they're down 2 pant sizes, and they look super fit. You can see the muscle tone, their butts are rounder. It's great. So the scale is not a good indication on its own. We need to pair it with other things. So whether that's pictures, whether that's measurements, whatever that might be. The next do is do be consistent within the goals that are set for you in the program that you're following or that you're working with a coach. This can be things like calorie ranges or fat goals, carb goals, protein goals, step counts, exercise days, workout frequency, whole foods, water, sleep, self-care, whatever it might be, because it's a very easy way to fall down this kind of slippery slope where it's like, oh, I didn't get my workouts out this week. Oops. Okay, not that big of a deal. Nothing bad happened yet. So then it's like, oh, I went over on this today. Not a big deal. Nothing bad happened. You wake up the next day and nothing bad has happened, right? Because you've grown to have that mentality during reverse diet where like, oh, this happened and The world didn't end. That's fine, right? But then it keeps rolling into a fat loss phase and into a fat loss phase, and one thing leads to the next, leads to the next. And then you get to the end of your 8 weeks, 12 weeks, whatever it is, and you see no changes. And then you're frustrated. But it's very easy psychologically to just be like, oh, it's not a big deal. Oh, that happened the other day and it happened today too, and not a big deal, right? So we want to make sure that you have some flexibility to saying yes to some things, right? But you have to be okay with the consequences that come with that, obviously, but you need to be able to get right back on track. And this can't be a thing of like, oh, on Tuesday, this happened. Okay, I'm going to get right back on track. And then Thursday, this happened again, but then I'm going to get right back on track. Because then if you're doing it over a few days a week, that can pull you out of your deficit. And making sure you're setting up some boundaries too, because like if you go to an event where you're more likely to drink some alcohol, it'll make you feel worse and more puffy and you'll be dehydrated. And then the next day it's a lot easier to skip your workout or, things like that. So you have to think a little bit into the future as to like, is this going to make tomorrow harder? Yes or no? Is that something I'm willing to, be okay with or that I'm willing to do? Just don't let yourself get down that slippery slope and have those boundaries. And the next one is do not forget setbacks are inevitable and they will happen. Maintaining a growth mindset during a fat loss phase is so important. So important. And this is something we work on with clients during a reverse. And you usually get pretty good. Like you get out of the mindset of good and bad foods. You get out of the mindset of like, we give you some advice and you're like, okay, thank you. I'm learning from this. Awesome. You move forward. You're not as like comparative with people's journeys. You start trusting the process more. You're more open-minded to learning and in failures. You don't take it so personally. You don't take criticism personally. Like you are growing a ton. You're not falling into the all or nothing mindset, right? And then it's like you go into a fat loss phase. And this is something I see in clients all the time. We have this amazing growth mindset we've developed with a reverse. And then it's like day one of fat loss goes out the window. Now, when we give you advice on like, okay, we need to watch this, or we're not as consistent here, get defensive. Start comparing your journey to other people's as to why you're not there yet. Easier to fall into all or nothing. Oh, I didn't lose weight yet. We're in week 2 of the fat loss phase. I may as well just do this, right? You take making a mistake or having a setback or a failure as oh my gosh, this isn't going to work. And then you just want to quit. Right? Whereas like we worked so hard in the reverse diet, like, oh, you made a mistake. Okay. What were the different options that you were like weighing, that like the choices that you could have made? What would have been a better decision, do you think? How'd you come up with the decision to choose what you did choose to do? How can we avoid this in the future? What are the steps that we can take so that if you're in that situation again, we can have a better decision made perhaps, right? So in a reverse diet, you do really good with that. But in a fat loss phase, it's like meltdown city. We all freak out. It's not working. I'm going to give up. All or nothing. Criticism. You're so mean. You think I'm not trying hard enough. And it's like this whole mindset that you've developed just goes out the window because now you're in a fat loss phase. And it's like, you're so worried about doing everything right. You're used to us in a reverse diet because by the time you get into a fat loss phase, we're telling you, you're doing great. You're crushing it. You're awesome. Like, this is awesome. You're almost ready for fat loss. How exciting. So you're not used to hearing that criticism anymore. And then we go into a fat loss phase, which is a totally different environment. There's less flexibility. It's harder to hit your goals. A lot more planning is needed. We need to be more focused, more consistent, right? All these things. And now you're like, you feel like you're failing. So then you want to quit, or you feel like it's not going to work, or it's too hard. And our whole mindset just changes. But you have to remember that if you're getting feedback, it's because we're giving you the information you need in order to be successful. We are helping you understand where things are going wrong so you can fix it, so you can reach your goals. If we don't tell you and keep telling you you're doing awesome, even if you're not, then you're going to be mad because it didn't work, right? And we have women in our program, like the last 2 testimonials that we've shared, which I don't share a lot of because I don't like when people compare their journeys. People don't read the whole thing. They see the before and after picture when it's like, hey, this was an 8-month transformation. But people are just like, I want to get there. Oh my gosh. And they think they're going to get there in 2 months and they don't, right? So I don't share a lot of those. But in the last 2 that we did, both women got pulled out of their first fat loss phase after 4 weeks, 4 weeks and 5 weeks, because they had a loss in the family. The other one had some financial issues that came up. There's just a bunch of different stressors, right? So we had to pull them out of their first fat loss phase. And most people will experience this, where we go into a fat loss phase, life throws something at you, we pull you out so that you're not in a stress state. We can like deal with this and then put you back in afterwards, right? But people panic and they're like, oh my gosh, life sucks. I'm never going to be able to go into a fat loss phase. Like life is always throwing things at me. It's never going to work. It's never going to happen. What's the point in even trying? I feel like I'm wasting my time, right? Because you're just assuming every single time something's going to happen. But no, I would rather this happens when you're working with us, right? Or a coach, because now we can teach you what to do in those circumstances and then put you back into your fat loss phase and then you're good to go, right? So we've had women who've gone into a couple, 2, 3, 4 fat loss phases because we've had to pull them out early a couple times because life throws something at them. But that doesn't mean you're not going to get to where you want to be. Can you imagine where you would be if you hadn't done your reverse diet and stuff first? When this stuff came up, you would have been in a much worse position, right? So you have to think like, just because you have an obstacle or a setback or a mistake, or maybe you need to come out of your fat loss phase for a short period of time and then hop back in, does not mean you're not going to be successful, but you have to have an open mind, be willing to grow, be willing to learn, to not take things personally, to not compare yourself, to not fall into that all or nothing mindset. Because again, you do so freaking good in a reverse diet, and then you go into a fat loss phase, which is like a whole different environment. It's like shooting a basketball free throws versus having to shoot a basketball when there's a bunch of people around you. Much different environment. So it takes time to learn. And every time you go into a different phase, you're going to be met with different obstacles. And especially if it's your first fat loss phase that you're doing properly after a reverse, it's a brand new learning experience for you. And it's not going to look like every other fad diet that you've done. So keep an open mindset. This is like the thing I see with almost every single client we go to. And we almost need to like check a little bit. Like, hey, remember when you had this huge growth mindset change in your reverse? Let's start applying that here. It's no different at all. Just a different environment. You can do this. Some general considerations for a fat loss phase that are going to make you more successful. So those like the big things, the mindset one, you guys, and then the prioritizing, like, is fat loss actually as important as you say it is? Those are the two really, really big ones, which, like, again, don't have a ton to do with tracking and stuff, but it's very important for you to like make those psychological like awareness, like that's really important. But here's some general considerations for nutrition and fat loss phase in general. So self-care, extremely important during a fat loss phase. You have to be intentional with introducing some form of de-stressing, whether it's putting your feet up, going for a leisurely walk, taking some downtime, filling up your cup. Because when we're in a calorie deficit and if we're pushing harder in the gym, it is a form of an extra stress. So our body, we need to be far more conscious of de-stressing, especially during perimenopause and menopause. When estrogen goes down, we lose that stress buffer. So you need to be far more intentional with de-stressing techniques when you're in a fat loss phase because your body needs it. If you don't do it, you're not going to see the best results. This is really not much of a negotiation point for the women in our program. There has to be some active form of self-care, even if it's just 5-10 minutes a day of just doing something to rest, to lower your heart rate, your breathing, because if you don't, you won't see as good results. So this is not a negotiable for us. Number 2, remember, if you want quicker results, they won't ever be as quick as you want. I promise you that. But if you want quicker, better results that are more effective, consistency, accuracy, and effort are going to be incredibly important. If you are not accurate, if you are not consistent, you really have to adjust your expectations. The next one is that the first 2 weeks, you're probably not going to see much changes on the scale. This is because your body holds onto water when fat loss starts to happen, and changes take time. You are going to feel changes before you see changes. So you might feel lighter, you might feel leaner, and then you hop on the scale and you're mad because it doesn't show what you want to show. But focus on how you feel, as that will make a difference. And remember, maintaining muscle is incredibly important. We are focused on fat loss. The changes in your body that the scale doesn't always reflect is that, because it doesn't tell us, do we have more muscle? Do we have less fat mass? It just tells you gravitational pull. So keep an open mind on weight loss and don't give all the power to the scale. Use some different metrics to really measure and use that all together. I have a client right now who's a pound up in her fat loss phase. Like we lost like 5 pounds and then she's up 1 and has kind of stayed up 1 for a while. But in her latest pictures, like the muscle definition in her back is unbelievable. So she's still putting on muscle, which is awesome. The next one is hunger. People panic because they're used to like enjoying food in a fat loss phase. They're not hungry anymore. Energy is great, right? Hunger is going to happen. That is normal because you're not eating as much food. So this is where you really have to adjust the type of foods that you're eating. So calorie intake is going to be lower, but instead of having higher fat dairy, we switch to lower fat dairy. Instead of having, I don't know, whatever you would have as a side, now we're focusing on trying to increase our veggies and increasing our fruit, something that has a lot more volume to it with lower calories so that you feel full longer. We're having more fiber, more protein, but we aren't having a very small volume of food in our stomach. That way it digests a little bit more slowly, takes more time to empty, and then we don't feel as hungry, but hunger is going to be normal in a fat loss phase. Having a framework or routine is going to help so much. How many of us do super great during the week and then on the weekend it all goes to crap? It's because our routines and habits and plans largely influence how successful we're going to be. So having some set kind of routine, even on the weekend, can be helpful. So I really encourage people to try and even just go work out on the weekend. Just one day, because then at least for one day, you're still going to have your pre and post-workout snack that has your protein, you're getting some activity in. So you still have some routine and something that's like consistent that you can work around and add things pre and post, right? Do some habit stacking there. That can be really, really helpful as opposed to just waking up and just winging it, because we know winging it on a fat loss phase really isn't great. Take some time to just plan for your week. Taylor and I do this every single week. On Sunday, we watch church. We do our marriage journal to check in with us and talk about what was great about the week, reminisce on it, talk about what was challenging, what we have coming up for the week. Is there anything that we want some support with for the upcoming week, how we can pray for each other, things like that. And then we sit down and based off that conversation, we plan what our week's going to be. So if I'm like, okay, this week I have a ton of work things coming up. I'm podcasting a lot. I have some later nights. He will plan to pick some meals that he cooks and he feels comfortable cooking and he enjoys cooking so that we can know we have set meals and we base our grocery list off of that. The nights that I'm available or I don't have as much going on, I will do more of the cooking and we'll decide back and forth what we want or what we're feeling, because pregnancy has been interesting. Chicken is slowly making its way back in. Chicken was my favorite form of protein by far, but little baby doesn't love it. So we're slowly toying with chicken. So every week he's like, hey, how do you feel about this? And I'm like, oh, we could probably try that. There's a little bit of chicken in it, but not too much. And it's like, we figure out what that looks like. We make sure there's a protein, a veggie, a carb at our dinners. Lunchtime is usually just leftovers. Breakfast, we have a pretty set few that we go through. And that's how we plan. And then if it's like, okay, so-and-so's coming over this evening or he's gone for a meeting, then we plan to make more the day before so that we have leftovers for dinner that following day. Or if we know we're going to be out, we plan for that dinner out so then I can plan my day earlier. It helps so much because people hate planning, right? We really do. We hate planning so much. But that whole process probably takes us 5 to 10 minutes to figure out what we're going to eat based on our schedules that week, make our grocery list, and then we're good. It's the worst when you've had a busy day or I've had back-to-back meetings and then a podcast and a live training and it's 8 p.m. and I come out and it's like, oh, frick, what am I going to eat? That sucks. And you're not going to hit goals that way, right? Especially in the fat loss phase. So taking time to figure out what that is and even put some of those things into your tracking app in advance. If you know what your breakfasts are going to be, enter those in way in advance. It makes your life so much easier and then you're less fatigued doing it during the day. Do not try to eat and then try and think back and put everything into your diary afterwards. That doesn't work. Do it in the moment or plan in advance. You will be far more accurate and you will do so much better. So planning for protein, going to be very important. never having carbs solo because that will lead to more cravings, and that's tough in a fat loss phase. So make sure carbs, you have them at every meal to give you energy, but you need to pair them with a fat or a protein or a veggie. So even fruit, if you're having fruit, have it with some nut butter, have it with some yogurt. You want to make sure you're always having it with something so that you're not having cravings, because cravings when you're already reducing calories is a very crappy place to be. Okay. Pay attention to your liquid calories, pay attention to cooking spray, even if it says 0 calories, it's oil. So always add at least 30 calories. It's about 10 calories for 1.5 seconds of a cooking spray. So make sure you account for those as well. Things just add up. So be as meticulous as you can that way. And remember, it's a short term. There's a clear start date, a clear exit date. Your diet should have a plan to exit and how to come out of that appropriately to avoid weight gain, so that you have a plan. And lastly, alcohol. This is always a tough conversation to have because we love our wine. I love sangria in the summer on a patio. It's like my favorite, or a mojito, amazing. But alcohol is going to slow down fat loss. Okay, so we suggest that you reduce it, or honestly just eliminate it. Again, it's a short period of time. You did it when you were pregnant for 9 months. You can do it for 6 to 12 weeks. You can do this because it is going to help you see success more easily. You're not going to have as much fluid retention, bloating. It increases stress on your body. So if you're also not de-stressing and you're having alcohol, it's going to affect your sleep as well, your hormone balance. So just cut it out for 6 to 12 weeks. People get flack from their family and friends for cutting out alcohol. What you can do is I never say I'm cutting out alcohol for fat loss. What I say is I've been having some hormonal issues and hot flashes. I'm cutting out alcohol to see if I can help balance my hormones. People will respect that so much more. They won't be like, oh, you're a party pooper. Like, oh yeah, that makes sense. Whereas if you say, oh, I'm cutting out alcohol to lose fat, all of a sudden somebody has something to say, right? But if you're trying to cut out carbs because you're doing keto, no one has a problem with that, right? But if you're cutting out alcohol, it's a big deal, even though alcohol is a toxin with no nutritional benefits. Bonkers, I know. So just say you're doing it for hormone health and hormonal symptoms, and they'll probably back off and, not be in your face about it. So those are the do's and don'ts of a fat loss phase. I hope that was helpful. The mindset piece, you guys, is so, so important. Being aware of the prioritization of fat loss versus what you're actually doing. And are you actually consistently sticking to the plan and not taking it personally when your coach tells you, hey, we need to work on this, this, this. We're not telling you suck. We're excited because we found the problem and now we can create a solution for you. Okay? Again, the first part of this is, are you eating enough food to start? Is your body in a place where it will even respond to a fat loss phase and a calorie reduction? Because most of you are not. That's why you're listening to this podcast. So please take our free Menopause metabolic quiz. It will tell you where your metabolism is, if you're ready for a fat loss phase, and then the next steps to help you move in your journey, whether that's doing a proper reverse diet, whether that's going into a fat loss phase. And again, you can always book a consultation, and we are always more than happy to help. Have a great rest of your day, and I will talk to you soon. Bye.